and welcome to the Dial Global Virtual Lounge, the show where we discuss the future of the modern workplace and the impact of diversity, inclusion and belonging with the world's most successful and innovative leaders. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a wonderful panel. We have Claire Bai, who is the SVP of Talent and HR Services at Aviva PLC. We have Jeff McDonald. Jeff is the co-founder of Minds at Work, a mental health charity. He was former Global Vice President HR for Marketing, Communications, Sustainability and Talent at Unilever. And last but by no means least at all, Campbell Fitch. Campbell is the governor at Glasgow Caledonian University and has wealth of international experience, as have you all, in fact. So welcome to the show today, and thank you very, very much indeed for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Me here.
Most welcome. And today we are discussing a number of very important topics, which I think actually should be top priority, actually, at during business as usual, or life as usual, should I say, but are particularly key at the moment, given the coronavirus or COVID-19. So today we're going to be chatting about mental health, well-being, how we can help support this as people, directors, and those who are involved very heavily at the forefront of organizations, perhaps some tips, tricks, and or even case studies that we can discuss to help give knowledge, resource, and inspiration to our listeners and to our members today. So without further ado, I'd love you all perhaps to just tell me a little bit about what you're doing at the moment and some of the impacts that COVID-19 have had. And Campbell, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay.
Well, as you know very well, my day always starts with exercise. So Jeff just beat me this morning when he got his 3 hours done on his bike, but certainly I like to take care of my own personal health, and that's something that's always been very important to me. And if we don't take care of our own health, no one else is going to tell you to do so. But most days at the moment is out for a run or out on the bike, social distancing, of course, and maybe a bit like Jeff, exceeding the 1 hour time rule. So you tend to get lost a wee bit when you're out on the bike, but it's very fine weather, exceptional weather that we're having up here south of Glasgow at the moment. So spending some time exercising, getting the garden in good shape, in between conference calls and Zoom meetings, which are filling up a good part of the day as well on a business side. But interestingly, reconnecting with my HR teams from previous roles. And I had one fantastic Zoom call this week with all my direct reports from Schlumberger. And the last time we met was my 40th birthday party 21 years ago in Houston. And we all got together on Wednesday night for a 1.5 hour Zoom call. And we reconnected as if we'd only seen each other, last week. It's great to be able to use some of this downtime that we've got at the moment, stuck in our homes, but being able to connect everybody, using the virtual technology it's available today. That's what I've been doing with my time during the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Very good. And Jeff?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time for me. I mean, and very, very different. As most of you know, a lot of my work tends to be in-house kind of consulting or speaking at various events around the world. And the events and speaking engagements have all dried up completely. Although they haven't dried up, they've just been postponed. And so what I've done is I've pivoted that to bring some of my messages to organizations through some webinars. And so I've created a webinar for organizations and for their employees, which essentially is covering things like, what are the psychological effects of COVID-19? What's causing some of those effects? What are some of the symptoms around anxiety and depression that I think everybody's got to be very, very mindful of right now? What are some of the things that you could be doing to look after your own mental and emotional health at this time? And then what should leaders be doing? You know, what is it that we're expecting leaders, and how should leaders be performing and behaving right now? And then what are some support resources that are out there for people? And I mean, it's just been amazing. I've just been blown away by the uptake, and you know, at the end of the day, people are just looking. They just want to hear a voice of reassurance. I mean, that's really the kind of big message that has come from it. So that's been keeping me really busy. And but the other thing is, you know, like Campbell, I am going to come out of this super fit. So I was relatively fit before, but now I am super fit, because there's almost not a day that goes by that I'm not either on the bike or doing a run. So, and I'm just loving it. And I've got my family all here, you know, my 25-year-old, my 22-year-old, my wife, and we're actually all living together quite well. So, yeah, so, you know, there's some real positives out of this time, reflecting more, and actually appreciating the really important things in life.
Very good. And Claire, how are you finding things?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's been quite busy. So we were closing our year end up until the last couple of weeks ago. So end of March was our year end. So it was all systems go. Obviously, in a software business, as you would expect, sales team really, really busy those last few weeks of the year. So a lot of support needed from me, my team, to just make sure they had everything they needed. And obviously just closing deals when you're not actually physically with customers was quite different for some of those team members. So different skills needed. But I think from kind of my own personal perspective, this time has been really, really good to just reflect a little bit on how I work personally. So I have a job where I travel quite a lot generally. I go and visit my teams, other teams around the world on quite a regular basis. So connecting via the different collaboration tools has been something we do anyway as part of our normal course of business, but doing it all day, every day, that's definitely, I think, been interesting. I think it's been good insofar as with cameras on, you get to see a bit more about your team members, how they live, you meet their family members, their pets, you know, etc., which has been fab. And I think we want to keep that going after all of this is finished, because that's been a really, really nice. It feels a lot more kind of transparent in terms of how you lead your teams. You share a bit of your life and they share a bit of theirs. I think you have to be careful that you don't work too many hours, though. I mean, I'm in a global business where, you know, it's Asia at the beginning of the day and West Coast at the end of the day. So personally, I've had to just watch a bit work-life balance. So last couple of weeks, I've got much better at having a break at lunchtime. I do an exercise class with my daughter, one of these kind of online mad workouts, and then walk every evening or cycle. I'm also a cyclist, so I go and cycle a bit as well. Again, I want to come out of this feeling fit and having lost a few kilos and feeling that I'm, you know, in a good place, rather than just, you know, raiding the fridge all the time, which the first couple of weeks I was finding myself doing as a permanent home worker. But yeah, no, I think it's ups and downs. Personally, I think I have days where it's, you know, it's pretty tough actually. I'm a real people person, so just not physically spending time at the water cooler, you know, talking to my team face to face has been a bit challenging, but we found different ways of doing that. So we have social time. We try every day to have a bit of a laugh and a joke and share a bit of the fun times as well as obviously work.
Have you introduced the morning or afternoon coffee breaks or evening gin and tonics with the team?
Yeah, we've not done the gin and tonic yet, but I haven't personally anyway, but some of my sort of extended team have, but definitely the coffee breaks. I think that's, and I've actually said to the team, let's not talk about work. Let's have just 15, 20 minutes to just talk about, you know, our families, ourselves, how we're feeling, you know, just tell a joke, whatever. Just try to just make it a bit more informal and relaxed, and, you know, and it's okay to say, actually, this is really hard at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're all feeling that to a greater or lesser degree at different times. So, and that's fine.
And all your employees safe? I mean, have you had any reported cases?
Everybody's safe. We check in on that every day. So I'm part of a daily call, which we set up early on, led by the business continuity leader, but a daily call to really check in and see what's going on around the world, make kind of quick decisions around what we might need to do. So, for example, we're in India, where we have over 1,000 employees, that I think when India was into home working, wherever it was now, 3 weeks ago, that created some operational issues straight away. Not all of our Indian team have laptops, for example, and obviously the nature of the work they're doing requires them, to be on the network, and obviously the security aspects of home working can be a challenge as well. So we needed to make some quick decisions about what we were going to do with that team, for example. But I think what's been really good is all of the well-being initiatives that I've had ready to go with, and actually were part of a big piece of work we were going to roll out this year anyway. I've been able to accelerate, and we've been able to do some great things around, some e-learning that we've been able to push out, getting some conversations going on our intranet around well-being, physical and mental well-being. And that's been great. I think it's a very hot topic at the moment. CEOs talking about it, everybody's talking about it, and that's really enabled some great discussions that I think if this hadn't have happened, would have taken a little bit longer to have.
Sorry, Leila, I just loved listening to how more human it feels with your team and in the area that you kind of control. You often heard me talking about how do we create more human workplaces, and in many ways this is really helping to do that, isn't it? They see your kid or your dog or it's wonderful. So nice to hear.
Yeah. I'm absolutely fascinated though with what's in people's houses, because I'm a bit nosy anyway. So what I have to, I'm fascinated with what's in all of your houses, of course, but it's quite funny, isn't it, how we're let into to people, our colleagues, our bosses, their homes. It's like, what's that? And actually people are this is something that I got on my last business trip to Paris or whatever, and that's been really nice as well.
But it's the humanity of it, isn't it? It's like just creating, it's about bringing that humanity to the workplace. And before it was kind of, no, you can't know about that stuff. And you know what? I'm not a unit of production. I'm a human being. And I just think this is wonderful in some ways. Anyway, Leila, you were going to say something.
No, I absolutely love it. I think it's a window into it's almost like it feels like a window into the soul of other people. You feel like you know them so much better because you can see them in their living environment, really, which I think is lovely. But some great points there from all of you. And Claire, to your point about fridge raiding, I've been doing the exact same thing, although there is no weight to lose, clearly, so you don't have to. I saw a very, very funny joke before I kind of go into the question asking. So a very funny joke about someone saying that you should wear masks inside now, not because of health hazards, but because of overeating caused by being stuck at home. Anyway, it's very funny, and I'm sure that you're all getting these WhatsApp messages and things like that, which are circulating and doing the rounds. But I think it's just so important that we are, as you've all said, we're human. We have personal lives. We have dogs, kids, whatever, who chew up microphones whilst we're trying to podcast and various other things. And actually that's all fine. We've got to have a laugh, we've got to have a joke. I know we had a fair few giggles before we started the show today, but that is so important to keep those endorphins going, because it can be terribly lonely, and obviously that loneliness then that can lead to, hopefully not, but further mental health and ill health problems later on down the line.
Leila, when we met with Jeff earlier the year at the L'Oreal workshop, and he was speaking about the importance of well-being and mindfulness, and this is obviously, the crisis. And later, you and I spoke about, well, listen, the two big ticket things on the agendas this year for HR is going to be diversity, inclusion, and well-being. And here we are, you roll forward, a few weeks later, and we find that, both topics are right at the top of every organization's, priority list at the moment. And they're not going to go away.
Yeah.
It's not just, this is going to last. during, you know, the next 3 weeks or the next 6 weeks, this is something that's going to make a fundamental change in the workplace.
Do you think that HR directors and chief people officers everywhere, like you guys, are thinking, I told you so, let's utilize this to try and push the agenda further? Because there's a number of chief people officers, and maybe because I have the pleasure of spending lots of time with you guys who are here today, but people have been beating the drum about mental health and diversity and inclusion, and it seems to, in some instances, have taken a little bit longer to get on the agenda. It's almost like having this, coronavirus now, whilst it's obviously not a good thing, it's been a way to be able to kind of push the agenda when it comes to actually getting it further up the priority list.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we heard what Claire was saying, you know, how she's, it's been a little bit easier to get some of this stuff out. But you're right, Campbell, I mean, over the last 18 months, my narrative has really shifted to that challenge to CEOs, CFOs, which is, you know, if the energy of your people is the most important driver of their performance, and you get your energy from being healthy, you know, you cannot have any energy if you are either physically, emotionally, or mentally unhealthy. Well, then why is health not a strategic priority in your organization? And if you don't want to make it a strategic priority, then where's it on your risk matrix? And are you comfortable with the level of investment that you've put in to mitigate the risk? Well, guess what? You know, COVID-19, here we go. If you're not healthy, we get no productivity, and we have economies coming to a standstill. And so I think, you know, one of the questions that was asked on the last panel was, you know, why don't they get this? Why aren't they investing in this stuff? And I often say, because I live in that world, I make the assumption that they get the link between health and performance and energy. But I don't think one should ever make that assumption. And in some ways, this has illustrated that.
But how many times, I mean, all of us, HR professionals, we can count the numerous number of occasions that we go to the CFO or the CEO and they'll say, where's the business case for this?
Yeah.
Show me the justification, show me the numbers.
Well, we just now need to say, look at COVID, they're the numbers.
Right. You know,
I think one of the things I've really appreciated actually in Aviva, and I think we've done actually really well as part of this, is the senior leadership team, so are really led by our CEO right from the beginning, going out with all hands calls, camera on, linking back this whole piece around, you know, what are our values as an organization, reminding everybody what those are, and looking at how, as leaders in the organization and as everybody in the organization, we need to really, you know, I mean, we're in a fortunate position insofar as, you know, most of our people can quite easily work at home. So, you know, in terms of transition, yeah, it's been a bit of a transition, but not too significant in that respect. But I think what our CEO has said on many an occasion is, you know, the way we all behave now, the way that we conduct ourselves as leaders will be remembered. This is our, you know, our employee value proposition of the future, right? This is how we will be remembered. So be very, very careful how you respond, how you behave. You've got it. Now is the time to role model those values more than ever.
Yeah.
You know,
I love it.
I think that has been a really, I mean, the feedback we had from people after, I mean, he's run a number of calls now, but he and every time he starts with the values and talks about how the values bind us together, and that's, you know, we use our values to sort of underpin and mold our behaviors. People really, everybody gets that, everybody understands that, and I think we had some great feedback about, you know, taking it back to that sort of, that, you know, that human behavior, that sort of human touch. You know, yes, we can talk about the financial effects. You can pull up McKinsey charts, and of course, everybody's worried about the economy, of course. But I think the message has been very, very clear in Aviva that we will get through this together. We will learn. Yes, we're going to have to make some difficult decisions, no doubt, along the way as leaders. But actually, coming out of it, we'll have a better business than we had before, for all the things we talked about earlier, you know, around just using different tools, different ways of connecting with people. I think we've seen a huge amount of innovation and creativity that's come from this. You know, I'm seeing leaders behave and act and come up with ideas in a way that I've never seen before, which, you know, if we hadn't have had this situation, we would probably have never seen. So I think going back to the role of leadership, really, really important that, you know, it's managed well from a senior perspective, because I think that then permeates all the way through an organisation. And doing that regularly, I don't think you can just do it once or twice. You've got to really be on every week, every couple of weeks, really reiterating the same message, and then having lots of time for questions. That's the other thing. We try and make sure we've got a good 20 minutes for questions. So, and any questions we haven't managed live, then go on to the intranet afterwards and are answered. And we, you know, we don't take any questions out. We have them all in. Again, goes back to transparency, being open and accepting that we don't have all the answers. There are lots of questions we don't have an answer for yet, but when we do, we'll you know, we'll let you know and give us your thoughts, you know, give us feedback.
No, Claire, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying there about your leadership team. I had a few exchanges last week with my friend who's got his own consultancy company in California, and he's a well-known published author, New York Times best-selling, you know, business books, Pat Lencioni, and he's beating the drum at the moment on 3 points. The first point he's saying to leadership is to be exceedingly kind and human, right? More than ever. The second point is be persistent. So you're speaking about communicate, over communicate, so that at the other side of this, no one's ever going to say about your organization that we don't know what was going on, you know, because they're hearing from the leadership all the time, you know, repeating the message. And then the third, there's never a better time now than for organizations to be creative. And I saw a note earlier this week coming from one of the leaders at Tesco saying that they have changed more in the last 10 weeks than they have in the last 10 years. You know, so just having to do things differently, because, you know, we all come from big corporate organizations and backgrounds, and we know sometimes that it can take sometimes for things to change. You know, there needs to be, you know, compelling, you know, proposition and reason, you know, to get something implemented, and then it's going to be run over, you know, a project or a period of time. I mean, some things are having to be changed overnight at the moment. You know,
but I also think, just coming back to what you were saying earlier, Campbell, you know, we were saying, hey, we know the business case for health and putting it at the top of the agenda and making it a strategic priority, but, you know, kind of why doesn't it happen? And you know, I think what this is showing, and I'm also hearing it from Claire, that, you know, we don't need that business. We don't need these business cases. I mean, what needs to, you know, this is just the right thing to be doing. And the organizations that are doing the right thing now, like your CEO is saying, Claire, those organizations will be remembered because they are doing the right thing. We know some of them out there that are not doing the right thing now. And so I think more and more, I hope that leaders, you know, begin to say, you know what, forget about the business case on that. What is the right thing to do? I always used to say that, you know, as in an executive team, you should be asking yourself the question, what could we do versus what should we do? Yes, we know we can evade tax because it's legal, but should we? And we should be answering the question, what should we do, rather than what could we do?
And that's when you can always be guided by your values, Jeff. I mean, if your values don't help you with that, then you've got the wrong set of values. Because if you're doing the wrong things,
but Campbell, I often see people go, we talk about care as a value, all right? And then you look at the way the organization is being run. You look at the high levels, the way they behave, how they behave. You know, they have all these wonderful values, but there's absolutely no care in the organization. People are being worked to the bone. You know, you've got long-term absence, you've got people ill, you've got high levels of stress, you've got poor relationships. And I suppose, you know, a crisis like this really, really shows us that let's just do the right thing. And you know what? I love what you were saying, Claire. You're gonna be remembered for this. You're gonna be remembered for this.
Can I go back to Claire's point? Sorry, Claire. You know, you were saying that you're going to come through this stronger than before. You know, which is great to hear, and I believe it. And I do think that that's going to be true for many, larger organizations. The organizations that I feel sorry for this now are the smaller organizations who may necessarily are not going to survive this. Because we're already reading that maybe as many as, 1 million companies are going bust at the moment. So we just don't know what that number is going to look like when we get through the next couple of months, because, if all the large organizations are taking a hit, to their cash reserves at the moment, you can imagine what it's doing to the small to medium-sized organizations who may very well not come out of this.
Absolutely. And there's a huge impact, again, with that when it comes to mental health and really being able to support one another. But then, what you've just all said there that really does resonate is the fact that, no, look, we don't need a business case. This is the right thing to do. We need to live and breathe and sleep our values. And look, there's so many people there that can pay lip service to them. Same as diversity and inclusion, belonging. No one's going to stand up and say, oh, hey, that's a rubbish idea. I don't believe in that. But you really see who actually comes through when you are in times of challenge like this, where, Aviva, as you said, Claire, there, you've got your CEO who's over communicating. I mean, you can't over communicate right now. Those businesses will be remembered. And unfortunately, the ones that don't stand true to their values, who frankly might have paid lip service to their values previously and now are struggling to actually marry the two up. It's times like this where you see it come through. It is really times like this where businesses excel for doing the right thing, and those that don't, unfortunately, may well fall to the wayside. And one interesting point before we hand back to you guys is, in fact, he's on our advisory board as well, is Ian Workman, Managing Director of Barclays. He was saying to me that some companies, and what we should do as a business is really heed this opportunity to try out different things and to really innovate, because it's times of challenge where some of the most successful businesses have ended up flourishing because they've had to pivot the business in order to adapt to the market. Anyhow, and just quickly, again, moving back onto what you've all there touched on, is the importance of leadership and individuals, especially people officers, who I think kind of have the double whammy of having to deal with everything, but then also being the spokes person of reason and reassurance, is that we really are now looking and relying on our leaders and our C-suite, especially CEOs, to play a big part. So I wondered, how important is it for CEOs to really believe in the values, and what can we do, especially from a people perspective, to be able to support this uncertain time? Because we have a lot of people officers who are members from big organizations and some small organizations as well, who are really feeling the pinch. Because I think as a people officer, you're the listening ear to the C-suite and to everyone, and you've got everything else to do as well when it comes to the nuts and bolts to make the organization work. It's a challenging place to be.
Yeah, I think, Campbell was talking about those three things that organizations and leaders could be doing, and I want to just build on that. I think right now it's really quite simple for leaders right across the organization. And yes, of course, it's got to start at the top. But I think the first thing is that leaders, they really need to be instilling trust right now. They need to instill a degree of trust that people, when they hear that leader talk and say what's going on, people are going to trust that leader. And I think that those leaders should also be trusting their people at this time and empowering them. You don't want all this micromanagement going on and checking up on people and what they're doing and how they're working. Just trust your people and empower them. So for me, instilling trust is number one. I think the second is to instill a sense of hope. People are looking for hope. They're looking for reassurance. They're looking for hope. So if leaders can instill, in the way they communicate, instill hope, I think that's really, really important. I loved what Campbell said about kindness. I call it compassion. Leaders need to instill compassion in their workplaces right now. Real compassion. And then finally, I think they have to instill stability. They have to try and reduce the uncertainty as best they can. They don't know exactly what's going to go, but in their communications, if they're trying to instill a bit of stability and reduce that uncertainty, for me, if leaders can be doing that right now, kindness, hope, trust, and stability, wow, I think that could be very, very powerful.
Definitely. I mean, I would just add to that, Jeff. I mean, I think the kindness is really key, and something that we've talked quite a lot about ourselves, what that actually means. The need to show some humility, is vital. I think to show people that you don't have all the answers as a leader is fine. I think in some business cultures that hasn't been fine in the past. I think nowadays it's absolutely fine as a leader to obviously open. You want to make sure that you're sharing your plans for the future. Of course, really important that people see where you're heading and that there is a plan. But to open up and share that some support might be needed to get there.
Yeah.
To show those listening skills.
The vulnerability. I would call it vulnerability.
The vulnerability, absolutely. I think that's a good way of describing what I'm saying. Is people really appreciate and respect that. And then what I've seen is as soon as you start to do that, I've seen that myself with my team, then it opens up all sorts of conversations that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So no, I think we'll see as a result of this a real change in the way a lot of our very senior, and I mean very senior C-suite leaders behave. Most definitely. And you're already starting to see it. I can see it when I'm on the media. I can see it, when people are being interviewed already. Just a subtle change of language that's being used. And I think that, hopefully we won't go back. We'll only move forward in a positive way.
Yeah.
So from a people officer perspective, I think this is all great. But it's tough as well. I guess we've got that balance of, we're potentially going to have to deal with some, I'm talking generally now, dealing with, reduction in workforce, dealing with difficult conversations. Are we going to have those virtually? And I think many people officers are thinking, is that coming? How do we have those conversations in the right way? Thankfully in the organisation I'm in, we're not in that situation. But, I can imagine going back to Cameron's point earlier, there are many organisations where, people officers, HR professionals are really struggling with that dilemma at the moment. That's difficult. I think trying to focus on a balance between having a strong commercial business head as we navigate through this, but not losing really the reason why we went into HR and we went into a leadership role, which is, fundamentally because we care and we want to do the right thing by our people, I think is important at the moment.
And acid test to this, Claire, and Jeff will appreciate this as well, is that, the organisations at the moment that are taking 20, 30, 40, 50% pay cuts, is that as soon as we go back to whatever normal looks like, do we go back to putting all that back in place and paying out big bonuses in a hurry? A lot of that is going to come under, a deep scrutiny,
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the other points I would just like to say is the other thing I've really seen change, if you like, is so we, like most large organisations, we have our CSR programme. We call it Action for Good. We encourage people to volunteer. Everybody gets their time off every year to go and do something in their communities, which is great. Obviously, at the moment, that's more difficult to do physically, but we've seen people start to do a lot of that virtually. So helping charities by either, being on a helpline or there was a story shared a couple of weeks ago about somebody in our IT team who'd helped a charity put Salesforce in, that kind of example, free of charge, that kind of example of where people are kind of giving some time back, yeah. I think is also really important. We've got a number of people in the UK who've said, can I be an NHS volunteer? Can I go and do something, in the afternoon, in the evening, I'll fit it around my working hours, but, we're sort of absolutely go and do that. I think it's important for lots of reasons. For people to go and feel that they've got that time to go and give something back. But actually, as an organisation, that's very much part of our DNA as well. So we don't want to stop that. So it's again goes back to the creativity piece. But it's saying, yes, please carry on with your action for good. Carry on doing, the things that you're passionate about. If you have to do it in a slightly different way, virtually, that's fine too. Fit it around, what you're doing, no problem.
If I could if I give you a great example of that I've seen at the moment, is that we're at the university, at Glasgow Caledonian University. We're the largest provider of nurses to the NHS in Scotland. So, of course, when we closed down the university and the students all went home, we have over 500 student nurses in third year and fourth year, and all of them have volunteered, all of them, over 500, to go to work in the NHS. It's just absolutely outstanding, you know. And I mean, and the university motto is that we're the university for the common good, but I can't think of a finer example during, you know, the situation that we find ourselves in, that, you know, that these young students, you know, have all, you know, without hesitation, all signed up to, you know, to go in and work into the NHS, which speaks values for them, but also to the university.
You know what I think would be such a fascinating exercise, Claire, would be to, if you think about the Warwick Edinburgh framework that I always use around wellness and well-being, which says we should look after our physical health, we should look after our emotional health. You've seen me talk about this. We should look after our mental health, and we should have a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. And organizations that attend to all of those layers, the engagement of their people goes through the roof, and that leads to better performance. I think it would be fascinating to see at the end of COVID-19 the engagement of people, because as an organization, you've given people time to look after their physical health because they're working from home. It's okay, they go for their run or for their walk or whatever the case might be. The emotional health, you've connected more, just like you were talking about. Remember, I talk about connection, emotional relationships. Look how you've connected with your team in a completely different way, which has brought the humanity to your organization. The mental health piece, you've said to people, you put the support in place, et cetera, and then you've said to all your employees, you can go and volunteer because it's about purpose, it's about giving back. And so in a very strange way, each element of that triangle, you've put some stuff in place, and I bet you people are working even harder, and that would be fascinating to see at the end of this, what are the engagement levels in an organization that's kind of been able to be quite stable, hasn't had to restructure, lay lots of people off, but has been able to put little things in place that have enhanced those aspects of wellness. I think it'd be fascinating. What was the engagement scores before, and what are the engagement scores now?
Well, maybe that's something I could come back and talk about later on.
I was just about to say that. Let's do another panel post COVID-19. Right, you've all agreed to it, so that's great to hear. And on top, I'm just conscious that we could all sit here and chat forever and a day, and there's so many things that we could and will cover in the future. Before we go, I really would love just to pose a question to each of you from our members and various others who are messaging in at the moment. So I'll give you all one each, but just very quickly, you had some great points there which were excellent, and all this material will be shared post the panel on our Dial Global platform. But hopefully this will be a time where businesses really start to embrace flexible working and agile working, because that is what we need. It's the future of the modern workplace, and certainly millennials, that the younger generations won't stand for businesses paying lip service to these things, for leaders that don't mean what they say, and for organizations that aren't giving them the flexibility that they want and now demand, frankly, with those.
Don't forget pensioners, Leila. Don't forget pensioners.
I am absolutely not forgetting pensioners at all, but I mean, I'm talking about those who are looking at business. Not that pensioners wouldn't be looking perhaps to non-exec roles for organisations that are doing very good things. Absolutely agree. But a question for each of you, and Campbell, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay, since I picked on you to start with. But it's quite a specific question, actually. Annie Lennox is the University Chancellor, the greatest musician of all time, clearly this individual thinks. What role is music playing to heal and connect us? And by the way, I agree. I think she's a great musician.
Yeah, you're not going to believe this, but obviously she must have heard you, Leila. She actually composed a song last week and sent it to us. She put something together for a minute and a half and then uploaded it on our website and posted it through the university last week. So
wow.
what an inspiration that, given everything else that's going on, that she finds the time to do that in her own home. But she is a massive supporter for the university, and I really can't think of a more inspirational person to have at GCU.
That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful to hear. We'll have to get copies. We can put it on our COVID-19 hub. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. And Claire, a question for you. So this individual, who is female, happens to say that Aviva is a tech company of choice for women specifically, and obviously for lots of others as well. What's your unique approach that focuses on creating workplace equality?
So I think it's about the experience you have in a tech organization like ours, which is not too huge. So we are about 4,700 people in over 40 countries. So not a massive organization, but big enough to give people an opportunity to work in a nice sort of matrix organization where they can work across functions. They get an opportunity to get different cultural experiences, secondments around the world, learning from some of the very best in their field. So we have some amazing talent in Aviva. So I think when we attract any talent in, I think the learning experience is huge. And I would say for women specifically, I think, yes, like many tech companies, we have a challenge. We need to attract and certainly are always looking for talented women to join us. But I think what makes it really, I guess, unique and special is that learning environment. And it really is, I think you have an opportunity to join a company like Viva and stay many, many years because you can move between roles, you can move across functions, you get the opportunity to work in a whole variety of different projects. And I think what we really work hard to ensure we have is this kind of flexible approach. So yes, certainly right now where we're all, working from home, that's just, I think, taken that whole flexible conversation to a different level anyway. But we try and adapt our working hours and our sort of the ways of working around individuals. So I think the combination of all of that makes it a unique place.
Thanks so much for sharing, Claire. And Jeff, finally to you. So this individual says, Jeff, I've heard you speak before and would love to do what you do by way of talking publicly. Have you any advice for how I might go about doing so?
Because there's a kind of what might sound like a bit of a cliched answer, but it is so true for me. Get clear on that sense of purpose. And when you're clear on a sense of purpose, it will take you to people and to places you could never, ever imagine. And that's happened to me. I didn't go out to find out how I could get onto different speaking events, etc., and market my. Just this clear sense of purpose has led me to people and to places that I could never ever imagined. At a more practical level, there are various speaking agencies out there where you can join those speaking agencies, and they can then give you the opportunities. When opportunities come up to go and do some speaking events. So that's the kind of, I suppose, very practical thing. And for this person, if they want to know some of those, I'm very, very happy to share those. But at the end of the day, I really think it's about just being, I think it was Mark Twain, the two most important days in your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I think when you get clear on the why, the universe conspires to put people, places, and opportunities in front of you that you could never have imagined.
Wow, that is really powerful and such a great way to end our virtual lounge for today. Very quickly, and I will be very, very quick. I think some of the key learning pieces from today, from all of you, there's been some real glimmers of golden nuggets, which I know people will be able to take and hopefully be inspired to go back and make a difference. But I will be summarising all of those in our show notes post today's panel. Very quickly, I think the key pieces certainly came out for me, and I think will come out for others who are listening on demand when they watch this, is be exceedingly kind and human, and make sure you have that persistence as well. Look, you know, the journey can be rough, and times like this, it's an emotional roller coaster. So communicate some more, and make sure you are speaking to people as much as you possibly can, because we all need support, especially seasoned business leaders, and all of you today have had a huge amount of experience, and so I hope this gives the confidence for others who are listening in to actually be open enough to go and seek advice, guidance, help, support wherever they may need, whether it be emotionally or mental health addressing, you know, just to make sure that you do speak to people. But finally, I think there's been some great stories when it comes to kindness, and that you've all shared. I think, you know, if there is nothing else that comes out of this crisis, it is positive ways of working. It is being more flexible. It is really sticking to our values. If we've forgotten why we exist, it is times like this to make sure we stick together. You know, it shouldn't be business as usual, I don't think, ever again. You know, let's make sure we prioritize the things that matter, because that's also great for business as well. So thank you all ever so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure having you all.